Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Good morning. October 1st. October is my favorite month. I'm not a sun bunny. I prefer autumn. Are there any questions or particular items of interest that people have before I begin my formal talk?
Well, I kind of have one. I came to Buddhism from a place where I was a little bit more suffering and a little bit more pain in my life, and now things are going really well. Mm-hmm. And I kind of wonder, it seems like it's a very useful thing not to be attached when things are kind of bleak. But when things are great, what's the perspective? Do you try not to be attached to that?
Yeah.
And, even though it's so much fun?
Yeah. My teacher used to say, a good situation is a bad situation. Partly for the reason you mentioned. It's been my observation that most people enter into Buddhist practice and other spiritual traditions as well because things aren't going well in their life. Like there's some kind of difficulty. And so the motivation for entering into practice is personal suffering. It's usually psychological or existential. It can be physical as well, or emotional. But when that situation changes, and inevitably it will, and things get better, then there's a very high dropout rate. And that's okay. I mean, I think it's a good thing that there are that the Dharma can serve that function, that sort of therapeutic function. In order to maintain one's practice through the good times, what's necessary is to develop bodhicitta. Developing bodhicitta means developing the mind that is practicing for the benefit of others. I'm not sure what tradition you practice in. I mean, it depends on the tradition, how that is accomplished. But if you have a comprehension of the core understanding of the Buddha as the interdependent nature of all existing things, then slowly one begins to realize that when one enters into practice, one's practice has effects and meaning, not just for oneself, but for other people as well. The comparison I like to use is to illustrate this point is to breathing. So when we breathe, it's not just us. I am breathing, but all of existence is breathing me. So I could not breathe if it wasn't for the rest of existence supporting that activity. So when I enter into meditation, it's not just I that am entering into meditation. Existence is entering into meditation. I don't mean that I am egotistically benefiting all the rest of existence by meditating. That I am bestowing, personal blessings on the ignorant masses. What I mean is that if you perceive meditation as arising out of the interconnectedness of all conditions, then one moment of peace, one moment of serenity, one moment of clarity in meditation is a moment of peace, serenity, and clarity for all sentient existence. This is how it's possible to actualize the bodhisattva vows. This is how it's possible to bring the bodhisattva vows to fruition, so that sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them all. One moment of peace, one moment of calm, one moment of clarity saves all sentient beings from suffering for that moment. When you have a mind of bodhicitta, so that the motivation for your practice is to relieve the sufferings of other sentient beings, practice is as smooth as glass, no problem. It's really quite amazing how wonderful bodhicitta is in creating conditions that are conducive to practice in a very smooth way. When we are wrapped up in our own personal suffering, the reason practice can be very rocky is we have a checklist. Are things getting better? Is it? And since our desires for improvement are absolutely endless, that approach eventually exhausts itself. There are some Buddhist traditions which suggest that that if you do not have your pure bodhicitta, that your practice is not good. Human beings, being what they are, my own opinion about that is that our motivation is probably mixed, almost all the time. But even a little bit of bodhicitta will form a foundation for practice. And I wouldn't worry. In other words, I wouldn't worry about mixed motivations. If you cultivate bodhicitta, if you bring that mind into your awareness of practicing for the benefit of all sentient beings, bodhicitta will grow. It's a very powerful understanding because bodhicitta is rooted in that primal insight of the interconnectedness of all sentient beings. So that's where bodhicitta comes from. So in a sense you could say that dependent origination, pratitya samutpada, and bodhicitta are facets of the same realization. Is that helpful? Okay. So I'm glad that your situation is good. When I was in Korea, I visited a mountain monastery where they've been meditating there for 1,100 years. It's fantastically beautiful. It was like this waterfall cascading down the mountains with pine trees framing the view. It was just like this Chinese, watercolor, right? So, and my first morning there, we arrived at night, and I really couldn't see it. It was a moonless night, but in the morning I got up very early, and I was just swept away by the physical situation. My teacher came up behind me, and he whispers, he goes, "Sometimes a good situation is a good situation." It's like he was reading my mind. I could stay here forever. So, any other questions or comments? I'd like today to talk about faith. It's come up in several interactions I've had with people in groups, and so I thought it would be a good time to talk about faith and its relationship to Buddhist practice. And in some Buddhist traditions, they very strongly emphasize the role of faith, that you have to have faith in order to make any progress, and that faith is absolutely essential in order to have any insight or any clarity, or without it you're just not going to make any progress at all. Not all Buddhist traditions emphasize it equally, but it's interesting that even in a tradition like that doesn't seem at first to emphasize faith, you'll find upon investigation that it is emphasized. A good example is Zen Master Dogen, who writes very eloquently in the Shobo Genso about how important faith is as a foundation for practice. And even though that's not, like at the gate, of a Soto Zen temple, at some point in your Soto Zen practice, you would encounter that kind of teaching. It's been my observation that for Westerners, this teaching can be highly problematic, and even distasteful. And I think it has to do with how Westerners enter the practice and their background, particularly those Westerners who have consciously rejected the spiritual tradition in which they grew up in, which would probably be Christianity or Judaism. Rejecting faith as a component of that overall rejection is often a very strong component of why they decided to reject that particular tradition. And so then when they enter Buddhism and they encounter some teacher saying, you must have faith, it rings that bell. It feels very uncomfortable. So what I'd like to do is explore what faith means within the Buddhist tradition and how it interacts with the practice. The contrast I'm going to make is with faith and belief. Right? So it'll become clearer as my talk progresses with the distinction that I'm trying to make between the two. Edward Kanzi, the Buddhist scholar, wrote a really good and very insightful essay on the nature of faith within the Buddhist tradition. And he suggested that there are a number of aspects to faith within the Buddhist tradition. The first one he calls intellectual assent to doctrines not substantiated by immediately available factual evidence. That means agreeing to accept something even though you don't have evidence to support that particular point of view. And in Buddhism, this is considered like a preliminary step. That you have to be willing to entertain for consideration the Buddhist view of the world or the core Buddhist understandings, even though they may not be clear to you, even though from your point of view there may not be factual evidence supporting those. In other words, you have to have a willingness to try it out. You have to have a willingness to try it out. This is tricky, because there are core understandings of the Buddhist view which are not obvious. There's, for example, dependent origination. The fact that all things arise dependently upon causes and conditions is not obvious. There are many philosophies and spiritual traditions, in fact, which would dispute that. They would not agree with that. And there are many people on an emotional level. There's a kind of reaction to that because we want to understand ourselves and interact with the world as separately existing individuals. So it's a very strong force, a habit in our psyche. So that when you hear that all things exist dependently or interdependently, that's not immediately apparent. So the kind of faith that is being talked about here is a willingness to try that idea, a willingness to engage with that and see if it works. In this sense, I see the concept of faith as the opposite of cynicism. Cynicism is a kind of, oh yeah, right, everything's interdependent, sure. Like if you have that attitude, you'll never give it a try. You'll never try and engage it. You'll never try and internalize it and move with it. Another example would be emptiness. It's not clear that all things are empty. It often takes many, many years of practice in order to gain clarity on that point. So a willingness. Once again, the practitioner needs a certain willingness to say, that's a very strange idea. How does that work? Once again, what I'm talking about is kind of developing a neutrality toward these ideas, so that there's a spaciousness in the mind that's willing to work with them, even though at first it's not immediately apparent whether they're true or false. In other words, you're not making a decision. This kind of faith is not saying, I believe, because somebody told me about it. Rather, it's a willingness to open the mind and say, that's a very interesting idea. I wonder if it's true. And allowing that to resonate, in your mind, in your heart, and see. Another doctrine that's often not clear is the idea of no self. That's a real puzzle. Has been for Buddhism right from the beginning. There are all sorts of questions. If there's no self, who's the recipient of karma? If there's no self, who is it who's talking? If there's no self, who is it who's listening? So there are all sorts of good reasons to bring up and say, what does that mean? But faith is willing to say, well, I think the Buddha is a trustworthy source. I'm going to give the Buddha the benefit of the doubt here, and see how this idea works, see how this understanding works. Another area is efficacy in meditation. Does everybody remember their first retreat? My first retreat was 5 radios going on at the same time in my brain. My back was very uncomfortable, I went for 7 days, and it wasn't until the end of it that I could look back at it and sort of see that was okay, and I was willing to do another retreat. But most of us, our first experience in meditation is not one of calm, serenity, and insight. So once again, there has to be a certain. I prefer the word trust here to the word faith, but it is the word that you will encounter most often among Buddhist teachers or in Buddhist literature. There has to be a certain willingness to say, I'm going to give this a try. It's a legitimate question. Why should I give it a try? A competent Buddhist teacher will be able to answer that question. The reason you should give it a try is many, many centuries of people have practiced in this way, and it has produced efficacious results. And the results are, as follows. One of the things in the Buddhist tradition that builds a sense of, do you mind if I shift to the word trust here? That builds a sense of trust is storytelling. That's why Buddhist teachers tell so many stories about past practitioners, because it builds a sense of trust in us that though all those people were able to do this, I'm like those people. Like I'm not really that different. From the point of view of the Dharma, I'm not different at all because I am a suffering, impermanent, interdependent being, which is the key. If that can be accomplished on their part, it can also be accomplished on my part. It may not seem so at this time. I've been meditating I've meditated 3 times and nothing's happened. but by hearing these stories, it builds a sense of trust, that this tradition is reliable. I like to look at this aspect of faith or trust from the perspective of other kinds of activities. I personally have found it helpful to do that, so that what's going on in my Dharma practice makes these other activities illuminate what's going on in my Dharma practice. So, in a sense, any kind of activity you undertake requires the foundation of this kind of faith and trust. For example, if I want to learn music and I go to a music teacher, I have to have a certain amount of trust in that teacher. I have to have faith that they know what they're doing. How do I know? Well, they're playing their music. They have other students, who I can talk to, and they say yes. This teacher, as a matter of fact, very skillfully showed me how to do such and such. Or I might know about that particular music teacher's teacher. That might be meaningful. It's also helpful because, suppose I have the goal of what's propelled me into learning music is hearing some really exquisite, beautiful music. But it's very complicated, and that's what I want to do. And I go to the music teacher, and the music teacher says, "Well, this is a quarter note. This is how you hold your hands. This is how you play your scales." It can seem very frustrating, because what I want is that full musicianship, So if I have a foundation in trust, I can realize that there is a path to that full musicianship, that I have to go through these steps. The same would apply to learning a language. Learning a new language. Let's say I want to pick up German or Spanish, something like that. Once again, there needs to be a minimal foundation of trust. In the text, in the teacher. The Chinese master Xing Yun often makes a comparison to learning mathematics. If suppose I'm very attracted to mathematics and I want to learn calculus or transfinite mathematics, it's first I have to learn algebra, and once again I have to have an understanding that this teacher, mathematics, has the capacity to do this. So what I'm getting at is that what Buddhism is requesting when it says that faith is foundational is not really different from what is requested in other activities. And for me, I have found that very helpful to make that equation. The word, usually, if I go to a music teacher, they usually don't use the word faith. So faith is a charged word, in our culture. It has a lot of connotations that are difficult for us. But if we see how it is functioning in the Buddhist tradition, there is its meaning. And its meaning is not really that different from what is being requested if you want to enter into any kind of understanding or activity. Does that make sense, what I'm saying here? Do people have questions or comments? Yeah?
Yeah, because, you open a concept like this whole, especially this time around, you open a can of worms. Because the moment you bring issues up like that, there's something in me that's over-centered, and then there's something that say, I do believe in certain things, and I have faith that I can accomplish those things. Where you, for example, use the word empty, I resent this word emptiness, period. Because it means something else to me, but I understand the meaning of the word itself, the way I feel that you have faith, the way you explain it. But I don't like the word itself, because it has something different meaning to me, so I reason all the time. And I think, because I'm teaching myself in a college, and I'm standing there, I explain everything very clearly, I use all the words I have to explain it and show it to the students, and they still come back with 10 different things. So I realized they didn't all interpret my words the same way as I interpret them when I said them. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
So when I listen to some of your words, I reason constantly with the value of the word itself, like emptiness.
Right.
Does it make sense now?
Yes, it does make sense. There is always an interpreter. We bring to the Dharma our biography, our autobiography, and our history, and that interprets the Dharma, and that's good. That's wonderful. That's how the Dharma continues to grow and flourish. So my understanding of the history of Buddhism is somebody will interpret the Dharma, and then they will offer that interpretation. If they are clear enough, charismatic enough, there will be followers, and a new emphasis or elucidation of the Dharma is brought forth. So, I mean, a really good example of that in the West right now is how the understanding of reincarnation is being reinterpreted, because of the history of Western culture and the kind of consciousness that we bring to that understanding. I think it's very creative. I don't know exactly what will result, from all of that. But this kind of faith or trust allows for that. So every time somebody plays a piece of music, it's a little different. They bring to that piece of music, even if it's a through composed, even if it's noted, it's not a jazz composition, it's something that somebody has written every note down. Every time somebody performs it, it's a little different, a little faster, a little slower. They'll bring out certain nuances that haven't been heard before. And that is also true with the Dharma. So if you don't like the word emptiness, I would encourage you to elucidate the meaning, and find a term that is more conducive for you. So there's a doctrine in Buddhism called the Four Reliances, and one of the reliances rely on the meaning, not on the words. And so the term emptiness is problematical for a lot of people. And it has also been problematical throughout the history of Buddhism. So that's kind of my response.
Yeah, because I think I like to reason all the time, and as a gay person, I'm here because I'm descended from other religion, and now into Buddhism, do I have to have faith in what somebody said 2,000 years ago, or whatever about gay issues? And can I reason with it and still consider myself a part of that Buddhist tradition and don't have to buy into every single thing? That's what I want to do.
Yes. What I'm talking about is shifting from faith to trust. Mm-hmm. Yeah? Did you?
I think, I just want to say, and this applies to reason too, I think your definition of faith is a really good one in terms of Buddhism. The willingness to try to solve this problem. For example, in Zen, in Buddhism anyway, you're taught to doubt.
Right.
And the object of the koan practice is to develop what's known as a doubt mass. It's sort of an obsessive, an artificially induced obsession. One of them is, we're taught all beings have good nature, and the first koan in Zen, in Minzai Zen practice is mu, And what that is a monk very seriously asks his teacher, does a dog have a Buddha nature?
Right.
And the teacher says,
No.
no. Mu is translated in Japanese, no. He says, no.
Yeah.
You know, what do you do with that?
Exactly.
Another one is, what's the sound of one hand clapping? There's no answer to that. Show me your face before your parents were born. One I like, one really profound one I like is when the Buddha became enlightened, he said that the world is perfect, just as it is right now. And Buddha lived in a very violent time, with wars all the time, suffering. It's pretty much the same as now. So what happens is when you try to reason out these problems, which are paradoxical and have no real answer, it forces the mind to leap beyond logic, beyond reason, into a different way of thinking.
Yeah. Could I?
Yeah, go ahead.
The cultivation of doubt, like in the Zen tradition, you cultivate great doubt, great faith, and great doubt simultaneously. Which seems very paradoxical, but actually, if you understand the faith that is being talked about here as a willingness to try, doubt is very conducive to doubt and faith are mutually conducive to each other. So for example, if you hear that all things arise dependent on causes and conditions, it is good to examine that. How do you examine that? You ask yourself, is that really true? That's doubt. Is it really true? Or all beings have Buddha nature? Is that really the case? By raising doubt, you enter into the realm of the Dharma. You draw yourself deeper into the understanding and the ramifications. Blind acceptance is actually a way of keeping yourself from entering into the realm of the Dharma and comprehending its meaning. I want to, if it's okay, I want to move. Oh, sure.
Well, maybe real quick, I'm not sure I'm understanding blind acceptance because I know there's some teachers, like if I hear Stephen and Ramri Levine or Pema Chodron, some of my favorite teachers, Thich Nhat Hanh, say something, I might not understand it yet,
right.
but I trust them enough to know that maybe someday I will understand. Is that blind acceptance?
No. As long as it's come up, I'll move ahead in my talking. That's what I meant by faith versus belief. So, the reason the term faith is so charged for many of us in Western culture is that faith is tied to truths that are that must be accepted unconditionally, and must never be challenged. What I'm talking when a spiritual tradition offers a particular truth and says that this truth is off limits, this truth is not investigatable, that transforms faith into belief, or that transforms faith into dogma. Right? And that is why the term faith has such a touchy relationship for so many people in our Western culture. Because when we hear the word faith, we tend to hear it in that extreme context. Just to illustrate this view with two historical examples, one would be Tertullian's, famous statement, "I believe because it is absurd." And that is saying, I'm not going to investigate this. I don't care. It's not only in religion. You also find this in ideologies and politics a lot. Certain statements are off limits. If you choose to doubt those or investigate those, then you're out of their group. Then you are excluded. One of the interesting things when you look at the Buddhist canon So take a well-known sutra like the Heart Sutra. The Heart Sutra doubts the Four Noble Truths. Like says, no origin, it's no suffering, no origin, no cessation, no path. Boom. Like that. So, and even so, the Four Noble Truths are like at the heart of the Buddha Dharma. But even the Four Noble Truths are not dogma. Even the Four Noble Truths need to be investigated and understood, creatively engaged. See, I think that it is possible to live a life completely free from belief and dogma. I think it is possible to do that. I think it is possible to do that. That a mind that is deeply meditative and contemplative, that has that don't know before thinking understanding, is a mind that is free from that kind of relationship to the realm of ideas. I doubt that it's possible to live without trust. I trust my auto mechanic. I trust the baker. I trust the florist. I trust the telephone operator. There's 1,000 interactions every day that have this foundation of trust. This willingness to. I trust that there's an Eiffel Tower in Paris. But if somebody said there's not, it wouldn't be a big blow to me. So this shift, what we're talking about is our relationship to the realm of ideas. Our relationship to the realm of ideas. When that realm of ideas is transformed into something fixed, it runs smack into impermanence and change. No wonder people who believe in certain kinds of dogmas are usually extremely tense people. Change and transformation happens all the time at every level, and it happens in the realm of ideas. So let me give a good historical example. For 3,000 years, Euclid ruled the realm of geometry. And there was a very, in Western culture, Euclid was viewed as someone who, Euclid geometry was space. That was for 3,000 years, absolutely unquestioned. Then, in the middle of the 19th century, somebody said, "Well, I'm not sure that really follows. I'm not sure that that's right." See, in mathematics, that's okay. You can do that. Even a system that had withstood, 3,000 years of investigation and use, the mathematicians who questioned Euclid were not, excommunicated from their professorships or their inquiry. In fact, they turned out to be, correct. I like to use this example because it's almost humorous, the idea of, some mathematician excommunicating another mathematician for questioning, a core idea. Not that mathematicians can't get passionate about their view of mathematics, but a core idea is not considered off limits to revision or off limits to questioning. That's the key. That's why mathematical ideas are not dogmas. Similarly in Buddhism, every person needs to engage the Buddha Dharma, in this process. Well, is it really true that all things are empty? Is it really true that all things arise dependently? Is it really true, that that the compassionate heart of understanding can blossom within me? And if you investigate that, doubt is a wonderful foundation for the blossoming of understanding. So the doubt builds the trust builds the doubt. Is that responsive to your question? Thank you. One other aspect I wanted to bring out about faith is the Kanzi mentions, which I found really interesting, is that he says that in traditional Buddhism, one of the aspects of faith is faith in oneself, which he says is, he calls it a synonym for confidence. And I find that really, really intriguing, and that's one of the components of the Buddhist understanding of faith or trust. The idea here is that I am capable of understanding this. I am capable of entering into this practice. So once again, if you relate this to more ordinary activities, I think it clarifies it. It's like if I want to learn music and I have absolutely no confidence in my ability to become a musician, I'm not going to take the first step. I'm just not going to do it. It's going to be, I just, I can't. Xing Yun always likes to use mathematics. Like if somebody is convinced that their capacity for understanding numbers is, just isn't there, they're not going to take the class. They're not going to, practice their numbers. It isn't going to happen. So without that basis, it doesn't have to be huge, but there does have to be some minimal sense of confidence in oneself. The reason I find this so intriguing is, Buddhism always talks about no self and emptiness. But they advocate that you need to have confidence in yourself in order to enter the practice. I find that a very interesting mix. But I think it's true. That. If somebody, doesn't have a minimal sense that serenity, clarity, insight, and compassion are possible for them, then they aren't going to enter into the practice. I mean, I've seen this many times. It's like, I'm just too. I'm too angry. I'm much too angry of a person. I'm much too depressed of a person. I'm much too, this. So I'm not going to give it a try. So if you don't have that minimal sense of trust in yourself, then it's not going to happen. And one of the roles of a Buddhist teacher, that when I read this, it suddenly clicked for me. Oh, that's why my teacher kept saying you can do it, in various ways. It's like it's building that. It's kind of like a coach, a Dharma coach. You may not see at this time that you can attain that understanding, have that kind of insight, or are capable of that kind of realization. But I know, as a teacher, I know that you can. Why? Because all sentient beings can. I just find that a wonderful, uplifting aspect of the understanding of faith. It's based on the fact that I and you, we are not basically different from all those people in the past who have also attained understanding and realization. And because we are not different, the Buddha and you, the Buddha and me, same person, same person, from the point of view of the Dharma. And so awakening is possible, understanding is possible. So, in a sense, returning to the aspect of dogma, the contrast I want to make between faith and belief is that faith is transformed into trust through our experience of practice. As our meditation continues, as our contemplations continue, as our study continues, faith is transformed into trust. And it's like something clicks in our mind, we have a certain experience of meditation, and then we understand, oh, that's what they were talking about. I get it. belief cannot transform into trust. By belief, I mean dogma. Okay. Dogma is, and because of that, dogma always feeds an authoritarian kind of relationship. Like it's foundational for spiritual authoritarianism. A good example of this, I used Tertullian, but there's a thread of this in Western culture. Not only Western culture, but since that's our background, I'm focusing on that. Kierkegaard was a very articulate proponent of this kind of attitude. And he called it the leap of faith, but I would call it the leap to belief. That even though it makes no sense, even though I will never have any evidence that supports this understanding, even though it is of the nature that there will never be an experience to support that understanding, nevertheless, I make that leap. So I understand psychologically the two realms to be really quite different. First of all, faith and trust. Faith evolves into trust, so it changes. There's a constant kind of ebb and flow and dialectic between faith and trust. Beginning with faith, we enter into our practice, we have certain experiences, trust blossoms. That trust allows us to explore other realms of the Dharma, and go through that same process. Belief does not allow for that. It is an attempt. It is an assault on the fluidity of the mind. It is an assault on the ephemerality of ideas. That kind of structure is an attempt to fix the world of the mind. It's possible for us to engage the world without any beliefs whatsoever, in the sense of fixed ideas and dogmas. The way you do that is by keeping, in the Zen tradition, Korean Zen tradition, they would say, keeping a don't-know mind. A don't-know mind means, and this is the example I always like to use. You've probably heard it before, but when I hear the sound of the wind chimes, an idea arises in my mind that the reason the wind chimes are ringing is because the wind is blowing. Okay? If I transform that idea into a dogma, and then you come to me and say, the next door neighbor's kid just threw a tennis ball at the wind chimes, I will argue with you about that. I will say, no, they didn't. It was the wind. So most human disputes are like that. They arise out of that sense that the realm of ideas needs to be fixed. So a don't know mind means that though I have an idea, it's not a psychic lobotomy. Okay, so a don't know mind means that maybe that's true, maybe that's not. Maybe something else is available. It's allowing space in my consciousness for the fluidity of existence. It's allowing the fluidity of my ideas to reflect the fluidity of the world. Right? And from that, when you enter into that, there's a marvelous sense of peace and serenity. Because you don't have to impose your ideas on existence. You don't have to make existence conform to one's own concepts. So I hope that we can all enter into that don't-know mind and trust in the Dharma and soon save all sentient beings from suffering. Thank you. Right on time.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.